What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about World at War's awful PS2 port, otherwise known as Final Fronts, so let's get into it. Now, before I completely shit on this game, let me first explain a few things about what this is. This is not an original version of World at War. If you've played regular World at War and you're playing this for the first time, you're going to notice a lot of differences. This is my first time actually playing this game. Recorded this gameplay last night, first time on this Final Fronts version of World at War. You know, when I got World at War, I got it for the Xbox 360, and it was one of the greatest World War II FPS games I'd ever played, aside from some of the Medal of Honor games on PS2, like European Assault, which was my first, at the time, more modern World War II FPS game, aside from stuff like Wolfenstein 3D, all great classics. This would not classify as a great classic. This is a completely unfinished game, and it's basically insulting to anyone who was a fan of World War II games back then if they were to buy this game. One of the biggest problems about it is the horrible lag and frame drop that you get. This is a completely single-player game with no multiplayer, yet it dips down into like 10 or 9 FPS. Normally it runs at 30 FPS, which you can see down there, but look at those horrible frame drops, dude. I've never experienced that with any other game that is a PS2 game aside from this one. And then you also have to look at the fact that the story is boring as hell, and you have two separate campaigns. You have the Pacific, and you have a British campaign in Europe. So no Russian campaign, which in World at War, the Russian campaign was pretty badass. The introduction of Reznov, you know, it was a pretty sick campaign to play. This is the opposite. This feels like one of those like PSP or DS spin-offs. Literally, it's that boring. And another problem with it is how bad the game looks. It looks horrible for a copy of World at War, and I understand that the PS2 didn't have the greatest graphics in the world, but there's so many titles that look so much better than this. And then you also have to take into the fact that you only get the campaign. You have no zombies either, which zombies would have been kind of a cool addition to this game. It might have actually made it worthwhile to play because the campaign was so boring and it was so stuttery. You know, I can only imagine, at least if there was a couple zombies maps, maybe it wouldn't be so shitty if you were sitting in a corner on Noctur on Toten and spraying with your MG42. And then, again, with the no multiplayer thing, that's a really bad move, because in 2008, multiplayer was important, especially online multiplayer. Xbox Live was around, and it was a big deal. And PS2 still had broadband support. I don't know exactly how many servers were up at that time, but it would have been nice if they at least included it, or at least had split screen in the game so people that didn't have online could have at least enjoyed that for a little while, because this game doesn't really have much else going for it. The voice acting is horrible in the British campaign. It basically sounds like a bunch of phony Americans pretending to be British. They couldn't even get real British voice actors for the British campaign. This is basically World at War, the dollar store version. Like, this shit, it's gotta be the worst FPS game I've ever played. And it's like, you know, the PS2 is such a great console. There's so many great games that came out for the PS2. And this game is like a stain on that reputation. This is the worst game that I think I've ever played in terms of a classic FPS. That's really all I can say about it. I mean, when you have a game that is stuttering in single player, that has a story that's boring, you have no multiplayer, you have no zombies, what else does this game really have going for it? And my main question is to you guys, who bought this? And if you did, I sure as hell hope you returned it and got your money back, because I couldn't imagine, you know, being that age back then and wanting World at War and getting this instead of traditional World at War. oh, it would have been such a disappointment. And I understand for kids who may not have known how great original World at War was, they might have thought this was actually the game. Because if you were to look at it, sitting on the shelves or anything, it would just look like a copy of World at War. The only difference being that it says Final Fronts at the bottom of it. But as a kid, if that's all you had was a PS2 and you wanted the new Call of Duty, you might not have known what you were getting yourself into. And what you would have been getting yourself into is a completely unfinished, horribly ported version of one of the greatest Call of Duties of all time. That's what you would have been getting yourself into. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.